Today we're turning half square triangles into stellar blocks. So grab your fabric and let's sew up some stars. The friendship star, that is. Okay, so to make this block, you're going to need a variety of fabrics and some background fabric, and you can use a plain white, a cream white, or something like this, like a white on white tone fabric or any low volume background. And we will be using some of these as background too, but we'll get into that. I'm going to show you a couple different variations on the friendship star. So for the first block we're going to make, you're going to need 4.5-inch blocks of your background fabric, and you'll need 4 of those. You'll need 2 5-inch squares of your colored block or floral block, and you'll need 2 5-inch of your background squares. Okay, so I'll put this aside and I'll show you after you have cut them out. We'll take our 4 4.5-inch background squares and we'll put them aside. And then you will need to grab your 2 5-inch background squares and the 2 5-inch main squares. So how we're going to do this is we're going to make half square triangles, and you'll just want to put your background square face down, right sides together with your other block, with your other square of fabric. So you need 2 of those, and then we're going to just take our roller and a pencil or a marking tool, and then you're just going to draw a line from corner to corner diagonally. Okay, and you'll do that for both squares. So then you'll take your squares to the machine and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam away from the center line that you drew. And you're going to do that on both sides of the line. Okay, so I'll do that. I have sewn our squares on either side of the center line, and now I'm going to cut them. And to cut them, you can use a rotary cutter or you can just use your scissors. You're just going to cut on that line that you drew. And this will give you 4 half square triangles. Okay, so now I'm going to iron our triangles. Start by setting the seams, and then you want to turn your seam to the darker fabric. And I'm using this really pretty spring fabric because in my next video I'm going to put all these friendship blocks together to make a table runner. And I believe I got this fabric on Amazon, and it was a fat quarter bundle, and I'll see if I can find that to list it in the description below. Now, I didn't starch my fat quarter bundle before I cut it, so if you prefer to do that, you can do that. And now we're going to square up our half square triangles to 5.5 inches. Now I've got this 5.5 inch square, and all I do is I stick the square on top on that 45-degree line right there in between the 2 colors, so that when you do that, all you need to do is cut off the excess from there. So you'll do that to each of these, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now we have squared up all of our half square triangles. We can start to lay out our block. You're going to start with one of your half square triangles here, and then you'll put one of your 4.5 inch background triangles next to it. plain blocks, background blocks. You'll do the same on both sides. And then for the next row, turn your half square triangle in this direction. And then you'll put your solid 4.5-inch square in the middle. And then set this triangle in this direction. And this one going in this direction. You can see now you have your star. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to sew all these together. You'll just sew each one of these in each row together, and then sew each of your rows together, all with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And when you sew your rows together, you'll have seams that you'll have to line up and nest, but I'll show you how to do that when we get to that. Okay, so I've sewed my pieces in each of the 3 rows, and now we're going to put our rows together. You just want to turn over that top one and then start to nest your seams. And you're just putting them right next to each other. And you make sure you don't overlap them and that there's no space in between them. And I always check in between just to make sure. And then you can stick a pin or a clip. And you go to the other side and do the same thing. And then I'm putting the darker fabric towards the middle, in that middle row, so that they're opposite. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing to the bottom. Okay, and here's our first finished block. So I'm going to set this one aside and show you the next variation. Okay, so for our next variation, I went ahead and I've already made my half square triangles and squared them up. And this one, yeah, I'm using the background with the rosebuds on it. So it's a 2-tone background. So for this one, I'm going to lay them out. But this time, I'm going to put them in the opposite direction. I'll show you what I mean. Going to lay them out where the middle star is going to be the background fabric. For the background itself, I'm going to use the same fabric here. Okay, then I'll go to the next row. Okay, so then I'll lay out my next one. And then the middle will be the same rosebud. This one. And this one. So now we have the same star shape, but using the background as the star instead. Okay, so I wanted to show you another variation with the same fabric where you'll just do the same thing that you did before, but you're going to turn your star in the opposite direction. So you start off with going in, just turning them around from the way they were. And so now it turns in the in the opposite direction as this other star. You can see this one is going in this direction, and then this one in the other direction. So you can do it either way that you prefer. And then we have one more I want to show you. And you'll sew this one just like you did the other one. You're going to sew them in rows. and then sew each row together. Okay, and so for the next one I wanted to show you is I'm going to use this same triangle with the solid white on this one, but I'm putting my background blocks in pink. So you'll just lay them out like you did before. And you can turn your star into any directions that you want. Okay, and then we'll lay out our last row. Okay, and so then I'll go to the machine and I'll sew it all up just the way I did the other ones. And then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's all of our blocks completed. I've ironed them. I'll just show you each one of them. And this is probably exactly how I will put them together in my runner, with this one in the middle going in the opposite direction of the two on the end. Okay, I don't know if you can see all of that on camera. But that's it. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below and let me know what you think. And please join me for the next video where we put this together and make a table runner. We're also going to add a little bit of some extra scrappy blocks to it to make it just a little bit longer. And then we're going to put our backing and batting and quilt it up. So I hope you join me for that. We'll see you back here soon. Goodbye for now.